What's up, everybody? Brett here, back today, casting some more Total War Warhammer 2 quick battle replays. This time it's going to be me versus Hal VOC, and he's going to be playing as the Wood Elves. I'm going to be playing as the Vampire Counts, and this was quite the interesting battle. Man, his build caught me off guard. I don't know what the meta is. I've been watching some of Turin's tournaments recently, and I mean, the Wood Elves are as, mobile and frustrating to fight against as ever. This army, though, did catch me by surprise. What we're looking at here, and let's go ahead and just kind of break it down. A front line of very resilient Eternal Guard with shield. So one of the things that probably the only thing that I vastly overestimated, or underestimated this game rather, were how long the Eternal Guards would hold. Their 89 leadership, buffed up by the encouragement aura, of course, of the Treemen, kept them in the fight forever. And I wish I had kind of foreseen that. I don't play the Vampire Counts very often, and I don't play as much multiplayer as I'd like to, but I just did not expect them to hold so well throughout this battle. Backed up with some Deepwood Scouts with Swift Shiver Shards. You gotta say that one slow or else your tongue will tie itself in a knot. Couldn't see these guys. Obviously, they are stalk type units, and I just suspected that either my opponent had a bunch of invisible stuff here, or they were playing, forest games, which, they're the Wood Elves. That wouldn't be unheard of. So I deployed myself and very much in the open with the possibility to defend my flanks if I needed it. But I was very skeptical when all I saw on the other side of the battlefield were a line of spears, some blade singers, which are absolutely just zombie and skeleton slaughterers. They do magic damage, but they also have this ability here, which they can activate, Whirling Death. So just give them straight up higher base weapon damage. You don't need armor piercing when you're killing vampire chaff, so they're really a great unit. And then some physical resistance helps them, as well as immune psychology. They're not scared. No problems dealing with the terror that we can often cause as the Vampire Counts. And then the Zoats, one of my favorite units in all of Warhammer, even though they're I think they look sick. They're like Ninja Turtles' big brothers. But these guys have healing spells. They come with Earthblood and Flesh to Stone. And these guys are pretty sweet, and they just beat the heck out of pretty much everything I have. And they're going to be really tough for us to take down. As well as the Lost Sylvan Knights, the Great Stag Knights, and another group of Great Stag Knights. Heavy, heavy hitters. Of course, the Lost Sylvan Knights are ethereal. Huge physical resistance, but at the cost of no armor. I don't have Death Magic, which would put these dudes in a trash can. If I brought Spirit Leech or Fate of Buna, I could, two-shot these things. But I didn't. I wasn't expecting this type of turtling up build. So, and with the leader, the Ancient Treeman here, being a Lore of Life caster, the plan here becomes clear. It's to form kind of a Helm's Deep defense, right, as Turin likes to say, but just to rely on your heavy leadership and just tons of healing from both the Treeman and the Zoats to keep everyone topped off, and then you kind of kite with the Deepwood Scouts, which normally isn't a problem, but I have brought a very mobility-heavy focused build here, anticipating lots of kiting, anticipating lots of lower-tier cav, even, the Gladewood Scouts and things like that, things that might kite me into oblivion. I brought Fellbats to try and shut down whatever range stuff was here, and at this point, I still couldn't see the Deepwood Scout, so I kind of just parked myself on the edge of the periphery, honestly getting ready to get ambushed from the side, so I'm going to be pulling out. I have multiple units of Black Knights and regular White Kings. You can see I'm doing a little bit of maneuvering here. White Kings completely stripped down. I got them on their Barded War Steeds, good armor, and shields. That's all I want them for. My entire front line, you'll see, is shielded, as well as my Cav Corps. I've got Varix Reavers here for their regen. If I'm careful with them, I can keep them alive for a long time. A simple Vampire Lord with his passives. We're going to have the Summons and the Invocations of Nehek for healing. One group of zombies, which, had they Vanguard deployed, I like to put them out front just to take perhaps the first couple volleys of archer fire. And they're basically free. 100 gold to absorb a ton of damage is usually pretty good. Lots of Skeleton Warriors. Some Spearmen kept in reserve in case there were those types of cheap cav units, as I mentioned. All shielded, right? And in the center here, the kind of piece de resistance of my infantry corps is just going to be the Stearnsmen. Almost always the last guy standing with their regen. Silver shields, worth noting, and 90 armor. And they beat the brakes off of pretty much everything that the Wood Elves are going to deploy in the front lines anyway. I've got another White King here off to the side with the Black Knights. And like I said, in the center, I have 2 Black Knights, one of which being the Varix Reavers, kind of accompanying my Vampire Lord. And yeah, that's about it, other than the Vargulf, which I find is a very nice option. As long as you keep him safe, he can do a number on the Wood Elves. As long as you make sure he's not the target of massive amounts of range fire, he can do great. My opponent's entire army is like anti-large armor piercing. All of it. The entire army, basically, armor piercing, anti-large. It'll crush my Cav. So upon seeing that, I understood my Cav aren't going to be the big players this game. Once I revealed or was able to see these Deepwood Scouts, I realized, okay, this is it. What I see is what I get. Kind of you do the math real quick in your head, and you're like, yeah, this is the army. This is what I have to beat. So I realized that my Cav isn't going to be all that effective versus the Sylvan Knights. It's not going to be that effective versus the, the frontliners, the Lord, the Blade. Like, my Cav is garbage. It's Black Knights. They're not that great. But what they are good at is absorbing damage. They can take shots and just generally helping the infantry to win the frontline fight. And that's how I'm going to use them. The Fellbats are going to be here to shut down the range tools. They're super cheap. That's their job. And yeah, as I posture in position and look to take some flanks, I was still, even though I saw these Deepwood Scouts, I think there was a moment here where I hesitated, where I was still kind of sure that there might be 1 or 2 units here, some Wildwood Rangers, something right here that was going to just start shooting at me. So I was being still a little bit conservative, kind of in case I had done my math a little bit wrong. But the problem with the Vampire counts, as always, and I was okay letting him take a little bit of damage. This isn't terrible, because I do have my Fellbats moving in. He's going to move in to protect. This isn't going to be the most micro-heavy game you guys have ever seen. But it's the type of fighting that our opponents have chosen here. And all I need to do is buy time for my front line to get in. And if my opponent wants to take this fight, I'm happy to take it. Black Knights, White King, I can send in Skeleton Warriors to hold the line until the Spearmen can show up. And I'll happily fight the Lost Sylvan Knights in that kind of a fair engagement. These Fellbats will die. They're going to get sandwiched by great stags, charged in the rear by them and ripped apart. The Zotes here are going to do good work. And I'm going to attempt to thread the needle here with some of my Cav. And we're just going to force my opponent into a box. Most of his units want to be in a box. But I'm not going to let the Deepwood Scouts go and get to the outside. And we'll be able to kind of like choose our engagements here. You'll see I have some infantry going to some fights, some infantry going to others, keeping some of my Spearmen in reserve on purpose. I don't want to just run them and get them stuck on more Eternal Guards. I'm not cycle charging with my Black Knights, which at the time I didn't feel like was a big mistake. Going to get an Invocation of Nehek here. Upgraded. Going to get the Undeath Resurgent. I'm just trying to buckle these Eternal Guards, and I thought it would happen so much faster, and that's my mistake. I thought Skeleton Soldiers plus the Black Knights would be enough to like pretty quickly break the Eternal Guard. But no, these guys hold really, really well. The Fellbats are almost out. But they've done a good job just kind of keeping these Deepwood Scouts tied down. And we're pushing through these Zotes, man. They're going to be an absolute beast. Flesh to Stone, putting them up to 120 armor. Absolutely brutal. Making sure that my Lord and my White King are in here fighting the Blade Singers. That's not something that they want to fight. They want to get onto my chaff infantry. I got my Spearmen. I finally brought them in once I saw the Zotes charge through. The Vargulf can beat down whatever it wants, but I do want to get it on large targets. It's just they're caught up right now with the remains of these Eternal Guards with shields. I'm going to give him an Invocation of Nehek. He does have his own regen, but I want to make sure he doesn't drop below 50%. I want to make sure he maintains a really good, solid leadership. And now it's a pit fight. The Blade Singers are being very hurt. I mean, that's a very good cast there from the Ancient Treeman. It'll do a lot of damage, but I mean, he did cast it on top of his own Blade Singers. I mean, he basically traded, 30% of his Blade Singers for 100% of my Skeleton Spear unit. I would say that was not a good trade. Not to mention a lot of Winds of Magic. Dwellers Below does cost quite a bit. That could have been heals. That could have been a lot of heals for something like the Sylvan Knights who need it. And I do believe they regenerate models as well as an ethereal unit, so you want to keep them as healthy as possible. You'll just see on the periphery here, they're just holding like crazy. This is a 2v1, and the Eternal Guards are just holding, man. Probably casting some of these cheaper spells just to trigger Life Bloom on his entire army. I wouldn't be surprised. Maybe hoping to get some of the the zombie kills going on. Zotes here are going to be fighting zombie summons, exactly what I want them to be fighting. I don't want them doing any of their armor piercing to any of my hero units or to my Vargulf or anything like that. As long as my Vargulf is hitting large targets, I'm happy. We're kind of alternating what we attack. The Ancient Treeman, whenever we attack him, he's been casting things like Flesh to Stone and other such things on himself. So we don't want to waste all of our time hitting him if he's going to have like 170 armor. That's just an absolute waste of time. Let the Zotes pound out zombies. My opponent's got a bit of a force back here. One of my White Kings gets isolated. Bit of miss micro from me. But I'm going to pull him back. And if he's just wasting all of his shots on my White King, that's fine. They're not joining this fight while I'm able to just kind of punch down his Ancient Treeman. We finally managed to defeat these Eternal Guards on this flank. However, this flank, bit of Eternal Guards rallying. Going to be fighting some Skeleton Warriors. They'll hold for a little bit. And the Sternsmen are going to act as our bulwark against this large force of large units that want to come streaming back in. And the Blade Singers have rallied as well with 29 models left. 26 now. Nothing to sneeze at. But the Sternsmen are well armored. If they switched over to their other mode, their armor piercing will be lower. So they'll be less effective versus Sternsmen, but much more effective versus Skeleton Warriors. And at this point, we've got a great surround going on the Ancient Treeman. The Zotes, once again, still stuck fighting garbage. Exactly where we want them. And the Treeman is about to fall. The Sternsmen are pushing everything back. Blade Singers are breaking. They managed to kill several of the Lost Sylvan Knights. The Treeman's about to fall. I managed to catch these groups of Eternal Guard that were trying to rally to the Treeman. I caught them with a good zombie summons right in front of them. And they weren't able to get in. So that was pretty sweet. And the Sternmen are, these Skeleton Warriors here are not having the best of times. But the Sternsmen are still doing great. They're just slowly regenerating. And I've been kind of just using, whenever it's off cooldown, man, I get a zombie summons. And I also get lots of Invocation of the Hex. I invoed my White Kings once or twice. And my Vargulf once. I think maybe even my Lord once. But a very good fight. It was basically the battle of the heals, right? I went with a very heal-centric, wide army. Lots of low-tier stuff. And my opponent went with kind of a quality armor-piercing, you know, kind of, this is made to, like, deal with huge amounts of chaff and to try and sustain through it. But I don't know, we were just a little too much. Our swarm was just a little too good. And yeah, at the end of it, I still had an extremely healthy Vampire Lord and Vargulf. My Sternsmen were still in tip-top shape. I did lose the Varix Reavers, thinking they would be able to win an early engagement with a little bit of backup, but they got absolutely smashed. I haven't had a chance to play with the Great Stag Knights on my own very much. In terms of like a Wood Elf campaign, most of my familiarity with all of the capabilities of the units in Warhammer comes from just playing hours and hours of campaign and just really understanding, you know, the matchup. Like, you know, Varix Reavers versus Great Stag Knights. Like, this is not a matchup I've seen very often. And even with a little support from some, you know, some zombies or something to tank a lot of the hits, they still get put in a trash can by these things, which is not surprising. Not surprising at all. But it's hard for me to estimate how long will they hold, how long, you know, until I have to cycle charge or pull out or whatever the case may be. I don't have a frame of reference yet that's that great for the Stag Knights, but I need to get one quick because they are in the meta and I think they're here to stay. But great play from my opponent. I like this build. If I was going to change anything, if I were him, I would... First things first, I would probably tighten up the formation. I would tighten up the formation, let everything be a little bit closer together. That way you can benefit from auras of leadership, from Earthbloods. You can get AoEs better. I mean, when your front line is so spread out, you're leaving holes for my cav and stuff to sneak through, but you're also making it so that your AoE spells are not as effective. I don't know if Deepwood Scouts here are needed. I think for the same cost, you could probably get many more. You could probably get two, like a poison, a Starfire Shaft and a poison archer, and you could probably also afford another Eternal Guard. I will also say, despite how effective they were, I might save the gold. I think it's 75 gold or something like that for the shields on these Eternal Guards. And I would probably save that. I'm a vampire count. I don't have any ranged tools whatsoever. Sure, you get a little bit of melee defense, but half of what you're paying for with the Eternal Guard with shields are the shields. So I would probably get the regular version, and then boom, 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 you know, you've got a couple extra 100 gold. switch these guys out to the armor piercing and poison archers. I would also probably cut 1 or 2 spells. You don't need multiple AoE offensive spells on the Ancient Treeman. I would probably take 1 offensive spell, 1 defensive spell, whether that be healing or something like that. And then, I mean, that right there, that little adjustment is like another, let me see, I don't want to over-exaggerate, but that's like another 800 gold, 900 gold. I mean, that's another Eternal Guard and another Archer. You know, or 2 more units more effective than a spell, some shields that aren't getting used, and then, you know, having so few ranged assets that you also have to protect them very well, but you can't because your army's not very big. So, I mean, I could just swarm them with Cav or Fellbats. I don't know. That would be my adjustment. I would always go wider instead of trying to go, you know, taller with more options. That's just my opinion. But guys, thank you so much for watching. My name is Brett. Channel is Goodtalk Gaming. Hope you enjoyed today's video. And as always, I'll see you in the next one. Take care, y'all.